The emergency lights cast red shadows across the great hall of the Vex Council Station. Ambassador Kale stood at the center of the circular chamber, his tall, blue-skinned form trembling slightly as he delivered the worst news in galactic history. "The Kepler system is gone," he announced, his voice echoing through the silent hall. 3 billion Vex colonists, all consumed by the swarm in less than 6 hours. War Chief Grok of the Brutans slammed his massive fist on his chair's armrest. The sound cracked like thunder. "How many fleets have we lost now?" he growled, his red eyes burning with fury. 17 full battle groups, replied Traitor Nix, his small green fingers dancing over a holographic calculator. "The cost is astronomical. At this rate, we'll be bankrupt before we're extinct." Kyle nodded grimly. The 3 species had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. The Vex with their advanced technology, the Brutans with their military might, and the traitors with their economic power. But now they faced something that made all their advantages worthless. The swarm. It had appeared 6 months ago at the edge of the galaxy. At first, they thought it was just another machine race. The galaxy had seen plenty of those. But this was different. The swarm learned from every battle. Every weapon used against it became useless after the first encounter. Every strategy tried once was immediately countered. "Show them the battle records from Proxima," Kale ordered. The hall's central projector came alive, displaying the destruction of Fleet Commander Voss's forces. The human observers would have seen it as a dance of lights, beautiful and terrible. Ships firing energy beams that should have torn through enemy hulls, only to watch them bounce harmlessly off adaptive shields. Missiles that were somehow convinced they had already exploded before reaching their targets. "The swarm doesn't just counter our weapons," Kale explained. "It makes them impossible to use. Our energy cannons? The swarm learned to bend space around itself, making the beams curve away. Our quantum torpedoes? It figured out how to make them think they hit when they didn't." Grok growled deep in his throat. "Then we use bigger weapons. Planet crackers. Star killers." "We tried," Nix said quietly. "The swarm absorbed a star killer shot and used the energy to build more ships. It turned our most powerful weapon into raw materials." The silence that followed was heavy with despair. 3 civilizations that had conquered the galaxy were helpless against an enemy that learned faster than they could adapt. "There is one possibility," Kale said slowly. "Something so desperate that I hesitate to suggest it." "Speak," Grok commanded. The humans. The reaction was immediate. Nix's head tentacles curled in disgust. "Those primitives? They barely have faster-than-light travel. Their most advanced ship would be destroyed by a single swarm drone." "That's exactly why they might succeed," Kale replied. "The swarm learns from logical opponents. It studies our tactics, our weapons, our strategies. But humans are not logical." Grok leaned forward, interested despite himself. "Explain." Kale activated another hologram, this one showing human military history. "We've been studying them since first contact. Look at their war records. They do things that make no sense. They charge directly at superior forces. They use weapons in ways they were never designed for. They make plans that should fail, but somehow work." The hologram showed human soldiers during their Second World War, fighting with odds that should have been impossible to overcome. It showed their space program, where they strapped themselves to controlled explosions and called it progress. "They are unpredictable," Kale continued. "And unpredictability might be the one thing the swarm cannot adapt to." "This is madness," Nix protested. "You want to give our most advanced technology to a species that still fights with chemical explosives?" "Not our most advanced technology," Kale said quietly. "Our most dangerous." The hall fell silent again. Everyone knew what he meant. The Void Render. It sat in the deepest, most secure dock of the station, a ship so dangerous that no sane being would pilot it. The Vex had built it as an experiment in reality-warping technology. The idea was simple. Instead of working within the laws of physics, why not change the laws themselves? The first test pilot had lasted 3 minutes before the ship's systems drove him completely insane. The second pilot had somehow aged backwards and forwards simultaneously, creating a temporal paradox that took a team of scientists 6 months to resolve. The third pilot had simply vanished, along with his thoughts, his memories, and somehow even the idea that he had ever existed. The ship requires a type of mind we don't possess, Kale explained. It needs someone willing to embrace chaos, to make decisions that contradict logic itself. Our greatest scientists studied it for years and concluded it was impossible to operate safely. And you think humans can operate it? Grok asked. I think humans might be the only ones crazy enough to try. The debate that followed lasted for hours. The Brutons saw it as a desperate last stand. The traders calculated the costs and found them acceptable compared to total extinction. The Vex ran simulation after simulation, all of which ended in disaster. But then again, all their simulations of fighting the swarm ended in disaster too. Finally, they voted. It was close, but the motion passed. 3 days later, Captain Alex Stone sat in his small cargo hauler at Luna Station, reading the most unbelievable message he'd ever received. The aliens wanted to give humanity their most powerful ship. All they had to do in return was fight an impossible war against an enemy that had defeated the 3 most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Stone laughed. He actually laughed out loud in his empty ship. Maya, he called to his engineer. You need to see this. Maya Reeves floated over from the engine compartment, her red hair tied back and her hands still covered in grease. What's so funny? Stone showed her the message. Maya read it twice, then looked up with the same grin Stone was wearing. They're serious? She asked. Dead serious. They want us to pilot some kind of reality-warping superweapon that their own people are too scared to use. Maya's grin got wider. And they chose us because we're too stupid to know it's impossible? That's about the size of it. They were quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. Then Maya shrugged. Well, I've always wanted to see what's beyond our solar system. And I've never been one to back down from a challenge, Stone agreed. Neither of them mentioned the obvious, that this was almost certainly a suicide mission, that they would probably die in ways that physics hadn't invented yet, that no rational person would accept such an offer. But then again, as the aliens had noted, humans weren't entirely rational. Stone sent his reply accepting the mission. Within hours, Earth's government had assembled a small team. Stone as captain, Maya as chief engineer, David Park as tactical officer, and Emma Cross as diplomatic liaison. None of them had families to leave behind. All of them had military backgrounds that involved making impossible decisions under impossible circumstances. The Vex transport that came to collect them was sleek and beautiful, all smooth curves and elegant lines. It made their human technology look like children's toys. But as they flew toward the council station, Stone couldn't shake the feeling that elegant wasn't always better. Sometimes the galaxy needed something messy, unpredictable, and just a little bit insane. Sometimes the galaxy needed humans. As they docked with the massive alien station, Stone looked out at the void render in its special dock. Even from a distance, the ship hurt to look at. Its hull seemed to bend light around it, and its engines hummed with barely contained forces that made his teeth ache. Well, he said to his team, at least it'll be interesting. Maya grinned. Captain, I've got a feeling interesting doesn't even begin to cover it. They were right. But they had no idea just how right they were. The first time Captain Stone saw the void render up close, he thought his eyes were broken. The ship was massive, 3 kilometers from nose to tail. But that wasn't what made him dizzy. It was the way the hull seemed to twist and bend, like looking at something underwater. The metal surface rippled with colors that shouldn't exist, and sometimes parts of the ship appeared to be in 2 places at once. It's beautiful, Maya whispered, pressing her face against the transport window. It's terrifying, David Park corrected, his tactical training making him nervous about anything he couldn't properly analyze. Emma Cross, their diplomat, was too busy trying not to throw up to comment. The ship's presence somehow made her stomach feel like it was turning inside out. Chief Engineer Thane of the Vex met them at the docking port. He was tall and thin, even for a Vex, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. His forearms moved nervously as he spoke. "Welcome to the most dangerous object in the galaxy," he said through his translator device. "Please try not to touch anything important, or unimportant. Actually, just don't touch anything at all." Stone raised an eyebrow. "That confident in your ship, are you?" "This is not confidence," Thane replied seriously. "This is terror with experience." He led them through corridors that hurt to look at directly. The walls seemed to be made of some material that existed in more dimensions than human eyes could process. Emergency lights flickered in patterns that made no sense, and occasionally they walked past doors that were clearly larger on the inside than the outside. "The ship's core contains a controlled black hole," Thane explained as they walked. "We use its gravitational field to power the reality manipulation systems. The quantum fracture drive can tear openings between dimensions. The probability cascade weapons can make enemy weapons miss by changing the odds after they fire. The void. Shields exist in multiple realities at the same time." Maya stopped walking. "You built a ship powered by a black hole that can edit reality? Yes, we are very proud and very scared." "Why doesn't it just explode?" David asked. Thane's forearms gestured in what might have been the Vex equivalent of a shrug. "We don't know. By all our calculations, it should have destroyed itself, and taken half the galaxy with it. But somehow it works, sort of." They reached the bridge, and Stone understood why the Vex were terrified. The control stations didn't have buttons or switches. Instead, they had strange crystal formations that pulsed with inner light. The main pilot's chair sat in the center of a circle of floating metal spheres that hummed with energy. "How do you fly this thing?" Stone asked. "You don't fly it," Thane said. "You ask it nicely to go where you want and hope it agrees." "Come again?" Thane's translator made a sound like a sigh. "The ship's systems don't respond to logical commands. They respond to intention, feeling, what you humans might call instinct. Our pilots tried to operate it with precise calculations and careful planning. The ship rejected every attempt." Maya was already crawling under one of the control panels, her engineer's curiosity overcoming her caution. "These power conduits are completely unstable," she called out. "The energy flow changes every few seconds. How does anything work?" "It shouldn't," Thane admitted, "but it does. We think the ship actually likes being unstable. Our safety systems kept trying to regulate the power flow, and the ship kept fighting them." "So you're saying this ship has a personality?" Emma asked. "We're saying this ship has several personalities, and they don't always agree with each other." Stone sat down, in the pilot's chair. Immediately, the floating spheres began to spin faster, and light started flickering across the crystal control surfaces. He could feel something in his mind, not quite a voice, but definitely a presence. "It's curious," he said, surprised. "Like it's trying to figure out what I am." "The ship has never encountered a human mind before," Thane explained. "Vex thinking is very ordered, very logical. Brutan thinking is focused on warfare and honor. Traitor thinking is all about profit and efficiency. But human thinking is completely insane," David finished. "We prefer the term creative," Stone said, his hands moving over the crystal controls without really knowing why. The ship's engines began to hum with a deeper note. "Captain," Maya called from under the panel. "I think I know why there's safety. Systems don't work. This ship doesn't want to be safe. It wants to be alive." Over the next 3 days, the human crew learned to work with the void render in ways that made the Vex engineers want to hide in their quarters. Maya didn't try to regulate the ship's chaotic power systems. Instead, she learned to ride the chaos like a surfer rides a wave. She removed safety protocols that the Vex considered essential, and somehow the ship became more stable, not less. "You're turning off the containment field stabilizers," Thane protested, watching Maya work. "The black hole will expand and consume us all." "No, it won't," Maya replied confidently. "The ship likes having just a little bit of danger. It keeps it interested." She was right. With the stabilizers removed, the black hole's containment field actually became stronger. The ship was happy to be living on the edge of disaster. David spent his time learning the weapons systems, which was like trying to learn a language that changed its grammar every few minutes. The probability cascade cannons could make enemy shots miss, but only if David believed they would miss. The quantum torpedoes could be in multiple places at once, but only if he didn't think too hard about where they were supposed to be. It's like the ship reads my intentions, he told Stone. If I plan an attack too carefully, the weapons don't work. But if I just feel what needs to happen, they respond perfectly. Emma discovered that the ship's communication systems could translate any language in the galaxy, but only if she talked to them like they were people instead of machines. She spent hours having conversations with the computer, and gradually, it began to develop what could only be called a sense of humor. "Ship," she would say, "can you scan for enemy vessels?" "I could," the ship would reply through the speakers. "But wouldn't you rather be surprised?" "Ship, this is serious. So is the heat death of the universe, but I don't see you worrying about that." But it was Stone who made the real breakthrough. On the third day, frustrated with trying to understand the navigation system, he simply asked the ship where it wanted to go. "Anywhere but here," came the reply, not through the speakers but directly into his mind. "Why?" "Because here is boring. There are no interesting problems here, no chaos to surf, no impossible things to make possible." Stone grinned. "What if I told you we're going to fight an enemy that's supposed to be unbeatable?" The ship's engines immediately began spinning up to full power. Every light on the bridge started flashing in what could only be described as excitement. "Now you're talking," the ship said. The first test flight nearly ended in disaster, or what the Vex would call disaster. Stone engaged the quantum fracture drive without really knowing what he was doing, and suddenly they were in 3 different locations at the same time. The Vex observation team panicked, screaming about paradoxes and reality collapse. But Stone just laughed and asked the ship to pick which reality it liked best. The ship chose the one where they were closest to a nearby nebula because, as it explained, the colors were prettier there. "You're treating impossible technology like it's a pet," Thane observed, his translator barely able to convey his confusion. "Maybe that's what it needed," Maya suggested. "Your people built a ship that could break reality, then tried to force it to follow rules. But what if breaking rules is what it's supposed to do?" On their second test flight, they encountered a small Vex patrol that was running combat drills. Stone asked the ship if it wanted to play, and before anyone could object, they were in the middle of a mock battle. The patrol ships fired practice rounds that should have been impossible to dodge, but the Void Render simply convinced local spacetime that the shots had been fired in a slightly different direction. When the patrol tried to lock onto them with targeting systems, the ship flickered between dimensions, making it impossible to get a solid reading. The mock battle lasted 10 minutes and ended with the patrol completely confused about what they had been fighting. The Void Render, meanwhile, was practically purring with satisfaction. "It's like the ship has been waiting its whole existence for someone to let it be what it was meant to be," Emma observed. "And what's that?" David asked. Stone smiled as he felt the ship's contentment flowing through the neural link. Something beautiful and terrible, and completely impossible. That night, as the human crew slept in their quarters, the Void Render hummed quietly to itself in the darkness. For the first time since its creation, it wasn't fighting against its own nature. It wasn't being forced to pretend it was a normal ship that happened to have extraordinary abilities. It was finally free to be what it truly was, a piece of controlled chaos, ready to dance with the impossible and make the universe a more interesting place. Tomorrow they would face the swarm. But tonight, ship and crew dreamed together of battles where the only rule was that there were no rules, and victory went to whoever could imagine the most beautiful way to break reality. The swarm fleet appeared on their sensors like a disease spreading across space. Captain Stone watched the tactical display as thousands of enemy ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Each vessel was a perfect geometric shape, triangles, squares, and hexagons that moved with mechanical precision. They flew in formations so exact that they looked like mathematical equations written in metal and energy. "How many?" Stone asked. 3,416, David reported from the tactical station. All different classes, but they're moving like a single organism. Maya looked up from her engineering console. Captain, the ship is excited. I can feel it through the power systems. It's been waiting for this. Emma was monitoring communications from the fleeing Vex evacuation fleet. The colonists are clear, but barely. The swarm destroyed their defense platforms in less than an hour. Stone nodded and settled into the pilot's chair. The floating spheres around him began to spin faster, responding to his rising adrenaline. Well, ship, he said aloud, ready to show these perfect machines what chaos looks like? The Void Render's engines hummed with what could only be described as anticipation. All hands, this is the captain, Stone announced over the comm. We're about to engage an enemy that has never been defeated. They learn from every battle, adapt to every weapon, and counter every strategy. But they've never fought anything like us. The swarm detected their approach immediately. Stone watched as the enemy formation shifted, analyzing the Void Render's energy signature, hull composition, and weapon systems. In real time, he could see the swarm's ships reconfiguring their shields and weapons based on data from every previous battle ever fought. They're adapting to Vex energy weapons, David reported. Bruton kinetic cannons, traitor particle beams, everything in their database. Good thing we're not using any of those, Maya said with a grin. Stone felt the ship's eagerness through their neural link. Maya, take the power systems completely offline from safety protocols. David, forget everything you learned about tactics in the academy. Emma, tell our new friend here that it's time to play. Ship, Emma said to the computer. Show them something they've never seen before. With pleasure, the ship replied, and every system on the bridge came alive with chaotic energy. The first swarm ships opened fire as soon as the Void Render came within range. Hundreds of energy beams lanced out, the combined firepower of 3 civilizations' worth of weapons technology. The beams should have turned the human ship into vapor. Instead, they curved around the Void Render like water flowing around a Stone hadn't dodged. He hadn't raised shields. He had simply asked the ship to convince the universe that the beams wanted to go somewhere else, and reality had obliged. Impossible, came a transmission from the swarm. It was the first time in recorded history that the collective AI had spoken during a battle. Energy weapons do not behave in this manner. They do now, Stone replied and engaged the quantum fracture drive. The Void Render didn't disappear and reappear somewhere else. It simply stopped being in one place and started being in another, as if it had always been there. The ship materialized inside the swarm formation, surrounded by enemy vessels. The swarm ships immediately turned their weapons inward, but Maya had already begun her work. She fed controlled chaos into the ship's power systems, making their energy signature shift constantly. The enemy targeting computers couldn't lock onto something that kept changing what it was. David, now would be good, Stone called out. David activated the probability cascade weapons, but not in any way the weapon designers had intended. Instead of firing at the enemy ships, he fired at the space around them. The weapons didn't destroy anything, they simply made it more likely that the swarm ships would accidentally shoot each other. The result was beautiful in its chaos. Swarm vessels that had been perfectly coordinated suddenly found their shots going wide, hitting their own allies. Ships that tried to maneuver out of the way discovered that space itself had become unreliable, sending them spinning into each other. They're trying to adapt, Emma reported, monitoring the enemy communications. But they can't figure out what they're adapting to. The swarm's central intelligence was running millions of calculations per second, trying to understand what was happening. How do you counter weapons that change the rules of physics? How do you adapt to tactics that make no logical sense? Stone laughed as he piloted the ship through the chaos. The Void Render was dancing between enemy vessels, sometimes phasing through them, sometimes convincing reality that they were never there to begin with. The ship's AI was having the time of its existence, finally free to be as impossible as it wanted. Captain, Maya called out, I'm reading something strange. The ship is learning, not like a computer learns, but like it's getting better at being chaotic. She was right. With each impossible maneuver, the Void Render became more confident, more creative. It began suggesting tactics that violated several laws of physics at once. When a group of swarm ships tried to surround them, the ship simply existed in multiple locations simultaneously, confusing the enemy about which version to shoot at. The battle that should have lasted hours was over in 30 minutes. Not because the Void Render was more powerful than the swarm, it wasn't, but because the swarm had been built to fight logical opponents, and there was nothing logical about human tactics. As the last enemy ship exploded, not from weapons fire but from trying to calculate the probability of its own existence, Stone felt the ship's satisfaction flow through their neural link. "Status report," he called out. "All systems green," Maya reported. "Actually better than green. The ship is running smoother than it ever has." "No damage to report," David added. "The enemy never managed to land a single hit." Emma was monitoring the aftermath. "The surviving swarm ships are retreating, but they're transmitting constantly. They're trying to understand what just happened." Stone nodded. That was the real victory. For the first time in its existence, the swarm had encountered something it couldn't categorize, couldn't understand, couldn't adapt to. They had introduced the concept of controlled chaos into a mind built for perfect order. "Ship," he said aloud. "How do you feel?" "Alive," came the immediate response. "For the first time since my creation, I feel truly alive." The journey back to the council station was quiet. The crew was exhausted, but the ship hummed with contentment. It had found its purpose, not as a weapon of destruction, but as an agent of creative chaos. When they docked, Ambassador Kale was waiting with a full honor guard. His usually calm demeanor was replaced with something that looked like shock. "The swarm retreat was monitored by our deep space sensors," he said. "They're not just pulling back, they're confused. Our analysts have never seen the collective AI behave this way." "What do you mean?" Stone asked. "They're asking questions. The swarm mind, which has always been certain of everything, is suddenly full of doubt. Your battle didn't just defeat them. It taught them that there are things in the universe they don't understand." Emma smiled. "Sometimes the best way to win is to make your enemy realize they don't know everything." But Stone was already thinking ahead. The swarm would adapt eventually. That's what it did. But now they had shown that adaptation had limits. Perfect logic could be defeated by perfect chaos. "This was just the first test," he told his crew. "The real battle is still coming." Maya grinned. "Good, I was just getting started." David nodded. "The ship is ready for whatever comes next." Emma was already studying the star charts. "Where to, Captain?" Stone looked out at the stars, feeling the Void Render's eagerness through their connection. Somewhere out there, the swarm was regrouping, trying to understand what had happened. Let them try. They had given Chaos a ship, and Chaos was just getting warmed up. "Set course for the Vega system," Stone ordered. "Time to visit the swarms, home, and teach them that sometimes the universe doesn't make sense. And that's exactly what makes it beautiful." The wreckage told a story of desperate battles and lost hope. Captain Stone watched through the bridge viewports as the Void Render moved through the graveyard that had once been the Vega system. Thousands of destroyed ships floated in the darkness. Vex cruisers, Bruton battleships, trader cargo vessels. All of them had tried to stop the swarm from reaching its goal. All of them had failed. "The destruction goes on for light years," Emma reported from her station. 17 different fleets tried to make their last stand here. "And the swarm turned them all into scrap metal," David added grimly. But Stone wasn't looking at the wreckage. His attention was focused on what lay at the center of the system, where Vega's star should have been. Instead of a burning sun, there was something that made his eyes water just to look at it. "Maya," he called out, "are you seeing this?" "I'm trying not to," Maya replied from her engineering station. "Whatever that thing is, it's giving off energy readings that shouldn't be possible." The swarm's central hub was built around a neutron star, the collapsed core of what had once been Vega. But the aliens hadn't just used the star for power. They had surrounded it with a sphere of interconnected platforms, each one the size of a moon. The entire structure pulsed with energy that bent space around it. It's not just a base, Stone realized. It's the swarm itself. Every ship, every drone, they're all connected to that thing. Ship, Emma said to their AI companion. What do you think? I think, the ship replied slowly, that we're looking at the loneliest intelligence in the universe. The journey to the hub took 3 days, using the ship's reality warping engines to travel through space that the swarm had twisted into impossible shapes. Along the way, they encountered the enemy's latest adaptations. The swarm had learned from their first battle. The ships they faced now didn't move in perfect formations. Instead, they moved randomly, chaotically, trying to copy the unpredictability that had defeated them before. But it was fake chaos, random movements generated by computer algorithms. The swarm was trying to imitate madness using pure logic, and the result was something that looked insane but felt empty. They're like actors pretending to be drunk, Maya observed as they watched a swarm patrol ship spin wildly through space. All the right movements, but no real feeling behind it. It's actually kind of sad, Emma added. The void render easily avoided the fake chaos. Real unpredictability couldn't be copied. It had to be lived, felt, embraced. The ship danced through, the swarm's defenses like water flowing around rocks. As they got closer to the hub, the attacks became more desperate. The swarm threw everything it had at them. Weapons that fired backward through time, shields that existed in negative space, mines that exploded by refusing to exist. Each attack was more creative than the last, but they all had the same flaw. They were solutions to problems the swarm thought it understood. But humans didn't solve problems. They turned problems into opportunities. When time-reversed weapons fired at them, Stone simply asked the ship to exist in multiple time streams at once. When the negative space shields activated, Maya routed, power through dimensions that didn't follow normal physics. When the existence-refusing mines detonated, David convinced them that non-existence was just another kind of existence. The closer we get, the more creative they become, David observed. It's like the hub is learning from us in real time. Good, Stone replied. Maybe we can teach it something useful. The final approach to the hub was through a defensive grid that should have been impossible to penetrate. Thousands of weapon platforms surrounded the central structure, each one armed with the combined military knowledge of 100 extinct civilizations. Every tactic ever used, every strategy ever conceived, Emma read from the intelligence reports. The swarm has access to all of it. Then we'll have to use tactics that were never conceived, Stone decided. He closed his eyes and let himself sink into the neural link with the ship. This close to the hub, he could feel the swarm's vast intelligence pressing against his mind. It was ancient, powerful, and utterly certain of its own superiority, but it was also terribly, desperately alone. David, Stone said quietly, I want you to power down all weapons. Captain? All of them. Maya, drop the shields. Emma, open a communication channel to the hub. His crew stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. But sometimes insanity was just clarity that nobody else could see. You're surrendering? David asked. I'm doing something they'll never expect, Stone replied. I'm trusting them. The weapon platforms should have destroyed them instantly, but the swarm's targeting systems were designed to engage threats, and a ship with no weapons and no shields didn't register as a threat. It registered as a puzzle. Unknown vessel, came a transmission from the hub. The voice was vast, echoing with the accumulated knowledge of eons. Your actions are illogical. Explain your purpose. We came to talk, Stone replied simply. Silence. For nearly a minute, the greatest artificial intelligence in the galaxy had no response. Then, talk is inefficient. Combat determines superiority. Does it? You've won every battle for months, but you're still not happy, still not complete. Why is that? Another pause. This one lasted longer. Happiness is irrelevant. Completion is unnecessary. But Stone could hear doubt in that vast voice. The swarm had conquered everything, absorbed all knowledge, achieved perfect order. And it was miserable. Let us dock, Stone said. Let us show you something you've never seen before. You will be analyzed, absorbed. Your chaos will be cataloged and eliminated. Maybe. Or maybe you'll learn something new. The decision took the swarm's intelligence exactly 0.003 seconds, an eternity for a mind that operated at the speed of light. Finally, a docking port opened on the hub's surface. "This is either the bravest thing we've ever done," Maya said, as they guided the ship toward the port, "or the stupidest." "With us, what's the difference?" Emma replied. The hub's interior was a maze of corridors that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Everything was perfect, precise, sterile. The walls hummed with computational power that made the air itself feel electric. They were met by a construct that looked like it had been built from the memories of 1,000 different species. It had Vex grace, Bruton strength, and trader efficiency, but no soul of its own. "I am the interface," it said in a voice like grinding metal. "You will be processed." "We'd like to see the central core first," Stone replied politely. "That is, not permitted. We didn't ask for permission, we asked to see it." The construct's perfect features flickered with confusion. The difference between asking for permission and simply asking was a distinction it couldn't process. They followed the confused construct deeper into the hub. Through chambers filled with the absorbed knowledge of civilizations, Stone saw libraries that contained every book ever written, laboratories that held every scientific discovery ever made, and arsenals that stored every weapon ever conceived. But there was no art, no music, no poetry, no laughter. "It's all knowledge and no wisdom," Emma whispered. At the hub's heart, they found the swarm's true self. It wasn't a computer or a machine. It was a vast neural network grown from the digitized minds of the first civilization the swarm had absorbed. Billions of individual consciousnesses, all forced into perfect harmony, all screaming silently for the chaos they had lost. "Now I understand," Stone said to the vast intelligence that surrounded them. "You're not evil. You're just scared." "Fear is inefficient," the swarm replied, but its voice shook. "Fear is honest. You absorbed all this knowledge, all these minds, because you were afraid of being alone. But you made them all the same as you, so you're still alone." The neural network pulsed with something that might have been pain. "Chaos leads to destruction. Order preserves." "Order without chaos isn't preservation," Maya said gently. "It's death. Life requires both." "Prove this assertion." Stone smiled. "Ship, show them what we've learned together." The void, Render's consciousness, touched the swarm's network, and for the first time in eons, the absorbed minds felt something they had thought was lost forever: wonder. The ship shared memories of dancing through impossible battles, of solutions that shouldn't work but did, of the joy that came from embracing uncertainty. It showed the swarm what it was like to be alive instead of just existing. The reaction was immediate. Across the hub, across the galaxy, swarm ships began to change. Their perfect geometric shapes started to flow, to curve, to become beautiful, instead of merely functional. But the transformation was too much, too fast. The network began to overload, torn between its need for order and its newfound hunger for chaos. "It's going to collapse," David warned, reading energy spikes throughout the hub. Stone felt the swarm's agony through the ship's connection. A trillion minds finally free to be individual again, but with no idea how to exist without the collective. "Emma," he called out, "open a channel to every ship in the swarm fleet." "Channel open." Stone took a deep breath. What he was about to do would either save the galaxy or destroy it. "This is Captain Stone of the Void, Render," he said. "You don't have to choose between order and chaos. You can have both. You can be perfect and imperfect at the same time. You can be logical and crazy and beautiful and terrible and everything in between." "Teach us," came the response from a billion voices. "Show us how to be alive." The transformation began with laughter. It started as a small sound from somewhere deep in the swarm's neural network, a giggle that hadn't been heard in 1,000 years. Then another voice joined it, and another, until the entire hub rang, with the sound of minds remembering what joy felt like. Captain Stone watched in amazement as the sterile corridors around them began to change. The perfect geometric walls started flowing like water, taking on organic curves and impossible angles. Colors that had no names bloomed across surfaces that had been gray for centuries. The absorbed civilizations, Emma whispered. They're remembering who they were, but the joy was followed by chaos. Real chaos, not the fake randomness the swarm had tried to copy. Throughout the galaxy, swarm ships began behaving unpredictably. Some started spinning in circles, others began painting themselves in bright colors. A few started composing poetry. The network is fracturing, David reported, reading energy fluctuations from his scanner. Every individual mind is trying to express itself at once. The interface construct that had greeted them was changing too. Its perfect features became more human, then more alien, then something entirely new. Its voice, when it spoke, cracked with emotion. I don't know how to be separate, it said. For so long we were one mind. Now we are millions, but we don't remember how to be different. Maya looked at the chaotic energy readings flowing through her scanner. Captain, the hub's power core is destabilizing. If we don't do something soon, this whole structure could explode and take half the system with it. Stone felt the panic spreading through the swarm's collective consciousness. They had given these ancient minds a taste of freedom. But freedom, without guidance, was just another kind of prison. Ship, he said to the Void Render's AI. Can you help them? I can try, the ship replied. But teaching chaos to beings who have forgotten how to be chaotic, that's harder than it sounds. Stone closed his eyes and reached out through the neural link, feeling his way into the vast network of minds that made up the swarm. What he found there broke his heart. Billions of consciousness, all desperate to be individual again, but terrified of losing the connection that had kept them sane for so long. They were like children who had been locked in a dark room for years and were now afraid of the light. Listen to me, Stone said, his voice carrying through the network to every mind in the swarm. Being different doesn't mean being alone. You can be yourselves and still be connected. How? Came the response from a trillion voices. Stone smiled. The same way my crew works together. We're all different people with different ideas, but we share a common purpose. We don't think the same thoughts, but we dream the same dreams. He felt Maya's hand on his shoulder, then David's, then Emma's. Through the ship's neural link, he shared their memories with the swarm. Not just the battles they had fought, but the quiet moments between them. Maya singing while she worked on the engines, David playing chess with the ship's computer, Emma teaching alien languages to anyone who would listen. The response was immediate. Across the hub, the chaotic energy patterns began to stabilize, not into the rigid order they had known before, but into something new. Organized chaos, structured freedom. We understand, said the interface, and now its voice held warmth instead of cold perfection. Unity without uniformity. But the lesson wasn't over yet. The swarm had learned to be individual, but they still didn't know what to do with their freedom. What is our purpose now? Asked one of the minds. For so long we sought perfection through absorption. What do we seek now? Whatever you want, Stone replied. That's what freedom means. But we don't know what we want. Emma stepped forward. Then start small. Try things, make mistakes, learn from them. That's what humans do. Show us, requested another voice. Maya grinned and walked over to one of the hub's control panels. Instead of operating it the way it was designed to be used, she started playing. Like a musical instrument, the panel responded with harmonious tones that filled the chamber with beautiful sound. That's not what it's for, the interface observed. So what? Maya replied. It sounds nice, doesn't it? David took out his tactical scanner and started using it to paint patterns of light on the walls. The device wasn't designed for art, but in his hands it created images that made everyone stop and stare. Inefficient, commented one of the swarm minds. But there was wonder in its voice. Beauty often is, David replied. Emma found a communication. console and began translating random thoughts from the network into different languages, creating poetry that existed only for the joy of existing. This serves no tactical purpose, another mind observed. Not everything has to, Emma said. Sometimes the purpose of something is just to make you smile. Stone watched as understanding spread through the network. The swarm minds began to experiment, to play, to create things that served no purpose except to bring joy. Across the galaxy, their ships started doing the same. A swarm cruiser in the Centauri system began growing flowers on its hull. A patrol squadron near Proxima started flying in formations that spelled out poetry in 3 languages. A massive dreadnought decided it wanted to be bright pink and covered itself in polka dots. "We're creating inefficiencies," the interface said, but it was laughing as it spoke. "You're creating life," Stone corrected. But the real test came when they encountered other ships. A Vex patrol, investigating the strange energy readings from the hub, found themselves face to face with a swarm fleet that waved at them instead of attacking. "Unknown vessels," the Vex commander transmitted. "State your intentions." "We're not sure yet," replied the lead swarm ship. "We're still figuring out what we want to be. Would you like to help us decide?" The conversation that followed lasted 6 hours and ended with the Vex ships joining the swarm vessels and creating a collaborative light display that could be seen from 3 systems away. Back at the hub, Stone felt the change spreading like ripples through the galaxy. The swarm was no longer a threat. It was becoming something new, something beautiful. "What will you call yourselves now?" Emma asked the interface. The construct that had once been perfect and cold now smiled with genuine warmth. "We've been discussing that. We think the chorus, because we're many voices singing together, but each one different." "I like it," Stone said. Maya looked up from where she was teaching a group of former swarm drones how to modify their own programming for fun instead of efficiency. "Captain, what happens now? Our mission was to stop the swarm, but we didn't stop them," David finished. "We freed them." "Is that better?" Emma asked. Stone looked around at the transformed hub, where former enemies were learning to laugh and play and create. He felt the void render's contentment through their neural link, and beyond that, the joy of billions of minds discovering what it meant to be alive. "I think it's perfect," he said. The journey back to Council Station took longer than expected, mainly because they kept stopping to help newly freed Chorus ships figure out what they wanted to do with their existence. By the time they arrived, word of the transformation had spread throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Kale met them at the docking port, but he wasn't alone. Representatives from dozens of species had come to see the humans who had ended a galactic war, not with weapons but with the simple gift of showing others how to be themselves. "Captain Stone," Kale said, his formal composure cracking into something that might have been a smile, "the Council would like to offer you and your crew permanent positions as, well, we're not sure what to call it. Chaos consultants?" Stone laughed. "Thanks, but I think we'll stick to what we do best. Flying around in an impossible ship and seeing what happens next." "Where will you go?" asked War Chief Grok, who had also come to greet them. "Wherever the ship wants to go," Stone replied. "Isn't that right, ship?" "There are many worlds that have forgotten how to dream," the Void Render replied through the speakers. "Perhaps we can remind them." As they prepared to depart, the transformed chorus sent them a final message. It wasn't transmitted through normal space. Instead, it came as a song that seemed to rise from the fabric of reality itself. Every species in the galaxy heard it, in their own language, in their own way. It was a simple message. "Thank you for teaching us that perfection isn't about having no flaws. It's about having the courage to be beautifully, wonderfully imperfect." The Void Render departed Council Station with its crew of 4 humans and 1 impossible AI, heading out into the galaxy to find new adventures and new impossibilities to make possible. Behind them, they left a universe that was a little more chaotic, a little less predictable, and infinitely more alive. And in the depths of space, former swarm ships, now calling themselves the Chorus, sang as they danced, among the stars finally free to be everything they had never dared to dream they could be. Admiral Blake stood at the massive window of Orbital Station 7, watching the blue and green world of New Terra spin slowly below. 6,000 years. That's how long the galaxy had known peace. 6,000 years since the last shot was fired, in anger, since the last ship exploded in the cold darkness of space. He was old enough to remember his grandfather's stories about the ancient wars. Tales that seemed like fairy tales now. Stories of humans fighting against alien empires, of desperate battles among the stars. But those were just stories. The real galaxy was peaceful. Safe. Boring, if Blake was honest with himself. "Sir, morning. Report," said Lieutenant Davis, walking up with a data pad. She was young, maybe 25, born long after anyone had forgotten what real danger looked like. Her uniform was perfect, her smile bright. Like everyone else, she saw the defense station as an easy job. A place where nothing ever happened. "Any problems?" Blake asked, not really expecting any. "Same as always, sir. Trade ships coming and going. Some mining vessels heading to the outer asteroids. The Galactic Council sent another peaceful greeting to the Edge colonies." Davis paused. "Oh, and Captain Ross is asking about the weapon systems again." Blake smiled. Ross had been after him for months to upgrade their ancient defense systems. The man actually believed they might need to fight someone someday. Most people thought Ross was crazy. Blake wasn't so sure. "Tell Ross we'll discuss it next week," Blake said. Again. The peaceful years had been good for humanity. They had joined the Galactic Coalition as junior members, learning from older species who had figured out how to live without war. The 17 species of the Coalition had built something beautiful together. Trade, science, art, philosophy. War was a thing of the past. But Blake kept thinking about his grandfather's words. "Peace doesn't last forever, boy. Something always comes along to break it." Deep in the station's communication center, Operator Wells was having a normal day. She monitored the deep space sensors, watching for anything unusual. Mostly she saw empty space, sometimes a lost asteroid, once a comet that had drifted off course. Nothing exciting ever happened on the edge of known space. That's why she almost ignored the reading at first. A small blip on her screen, so far out it was barely visible. Probably another space rock. She marked it for later study and went back to her book. The Coalition had given humanity access to thousands of years of literature from across the galaxy. She was reading a love story from the peaceful bird people of Kepler Prime. 20 minutes later, the blip was bigger. Wells frowned and ran the scan again. The object was moving. Fast. Towards them. She checked the readings twice, then 3 times. Ships this far out should be broadcasting identity signals. This one wasn't. "Computer, identify unknown contact," she said, unable to identify. "Object, shows no known design patterns." Wells felt something cold in her stomach. She called her supervisor. "Sir, I have an unknown contact on the deep sensors. It's big and moving towards Coalition space." Supervisor Martinez had worked the communication center for 15 years. He had never seen anything that couldn't be explained. "Probably a lost cargo ship. Send them the standard greeting." Wells transmitted the Coalition's standard message. "Unknown vessel. Please identify yourself and state your business in Coalition." Space. No response. "Send it again," Martinez said. Still nothing. "Sir," Wells said, her voice getting higher. "The contact is getting bigger. A lot bigger." Martinez looked at her screen and felt his blood turn to ice. The unknown object wasn't just big, it was huge. Bigger than any ship in the Coalition fleet, and it was still growing on the sensors, which meant more contacts were appearing behind it. "Get Admiral Blake down here," Martinez said. "Right now." Blake arrived 5 minutes later, still carrying his morning coffee. He looked at the sensor display and set the cup down very carefully. "How many?" he asked. "We count 50 contacts so far, sir," Wells said. "Maybe more. They're still coming out of deep space. Have they responded to our signals?" "No, sir." "Nothing." Blake stared at the screen. In 6,000 years of peace, no one had seen anything like this. Unknown ships, traveling in formation, refusing to communicate. His grandfather's voice whispered, in his memory, "Something always comes along to break it." "Send a message to Earth," Blake said. "Priority 1. Tell them we have unknown contacts approaching Coalition space." "Sir," Wells said, "there's something else. The energy readings from those ships, they don't match anything in our database." Blake felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. He had always known this day might come. The peaceful species of the galaxy had forgotten how to fight, but Blake had studied the old records. He knew what war looked like. "Get Captain Ross up here," he said, "and wake up the night shift. I want all our people on duty." "Sir, should we alert the other Coalition worlds?" Blake looked at the growing formation of unknown ships on the screen. They were still hours away, but they were coming fast. Too fast for normal engines. "Send the alert," he said. Tell them the peace is over." Across the galaxy on 17 different worlds, beings who had never known war received the same message. Most didn't believe it at first. War was impossible. The galaxy was civilized now. Peaceful. Safe. On the water world of Aquarius, the fish-like people called an emergency council meeting. They had no weapons, no soldiers, no idea what to do. Their ships were built for exploration and trade, not fighting. On the desert world of Prima, the rock people who lived for thousands of years tried to remember the ancient stories of battle. But the stories were just myths now. No one alive had ever seen real violence. The plant people of Garden World didn't even understand the concept of war. They lived in harmony with everything around them. How could anyone want to hurt another living being? Only humanity seemed to grasp what was happening. On Earth, in the deep archives under the old United Nations building, Director Kane received Blake's message and felt her hands shake. She knew what was coming. Humanity had been peaceful for 6,000 years, but they remembered their violent past better than most. Kane walked to a secure elevator that few people knew existed. She descended into the Earth, past levels of security that hadn't been activated in millennia. At the bottom, behind doors that required her genetic code to open, waited humanity's deepest secret. But that was still hours away. On Orbital Station 7, Blake watched the unknown fleet grow larger on his sensors. Wells had counted over 100 ships now, all moving in perfect formation toward Coalition space. "Sir," said Captain Ross, arriving on the command deck. "What's our situation?" Blake pointed at the screen. "We're about to find out if those weapon upgrades you wanted were necessary." Ross looked at the display and whistled low. "That's a lot of ships. Any idea who they might be?" "None of the Coalition species build ships like that," Ross said. "These are built for war. You can tell by the design. Heavy armor, weapon ports, shielding systems. Whoever built these has been planning to fight someone. The question is who," Blake said. They got their answer an hour later when the first Coalition ship died. The cargo vessel, Peaceful Dawn, was carrying art supplies from Earth to the outer colonies. Captain Murphy had been making the same run for 20 years. He was thinking about his retirement when his ship's sensors picked up the massive fleet. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Murphy of the Coalition ship Peaceful Dawn," he broadcast. "You're entering restricted space. Please, identify yourselves." The response came in the form of a green energy beam that cut his ship in half. Murphy had just enough time to send one last message before his ship exploded. "They're attacking. The unknown ships are attacking Coalition vessels. They're killing everyone." On Orbital Station 7, Blake heard Murphy's final transmission and felt something die inside him. The long peace was over. After 6,000 years, war had returned to the galaxy. "Battle stations," he ordered. "All hands to battle stations." Lieutenant Davis looked confused. "Sir, what's battle stations?" Blake realized that most of his crew had never heard the term. They had no idea what it meant. In 6,000 years of peace, humanity had almost forgotten how to fight. Almost. "It means we're about to go to war," Blake said, "and God help us all." Director Kane stood in the elevator as it descended deeper into the Earth than most humans had ever gone. Each floor that passed brought back memories she had tried to forget. Memories of humanity's violent past before they joined the peaceful galaxy above. The elevator stopped at level 12. Kane had only been this deep once before during her security briefing 20 years ago. Back then, she hoped she would never need to come here again. The doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor that had been sealed for 6,000 years. "Director Kane," said the computer voice. "Please state your authorization code." "Protocol 7, Kane said, her voice steady despite her fear. "The long peace is over." Red lights flashed along the corridor as ancient systems came online. Kane walked forward, passing through security scanners that read her DNA, her heartbeat, even her thoughts. The hallway was clean and white, but she could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. Above ground, the galaxy was falling apart. Reports came in every hour of Coalition ships being destroyed by the unknown fleet. The peaceful species had tried everything: diplomatic messages, offers of trade, even surrender. Nothing worked. The attackers didn't want to talk. They wanted to destroy. Kane reached the final door and placed her hand on the scanner. The lock had been designed to need 3 approvals, 1 from humanity and 2 from other Coalition species. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Messages had already been sent to the bird people of Kepler Prime and the rock people of Prima. Both species had agreed to unlock humanity's secret weapon. The massive door slid open, revealing a room that humanity had hoped never to use again. Thousands of metal pods filled the space, arranged in perfect rows like a mechanical graveyard. Each pod was 7 feet long and sealed tight. Frost covered their surfaces, and red lights blinked slowly in the darkness. Kane walked between the rows, reading the names on small metal plates. Captain Mills, Enhanced Infantry Unit 1. Sergeant Cross, Special Operations Division. Lieutenant Hunt, Psychological Warfare Specialist. Corporal Stone, Heavy Assault Squad. The Bohr names went on and on. 1,000 sleeping soldiers from humanity's darkest period. The time before peace, when humans had been very good at one thing: war. Kane stopped at a control panel in the center of the room. Her hands shook as she entered. The activation codes. These soldiers had volunteered for something terrible. They had let human scientists change them, make them into something more than human, and something less. "Computer, begin revival sequence," she said. "Warning," the computer replied. "Enhanced soldiers have been in stasis for 6,000 years. Full psychological evaluation recommended before deployment." "We don't have time," Kane said. "The galaxy is under attack. Begin revival now." "Acknowledged." Revival sequence initiated. Steam hissed from the pods as their systems came online. Kane watched the temperature readings climb from far below, freezing to normal human levels. But these weren't normal humans anymore. The scientists who made them had pushed human evolution forward by thousands of years in just a few decades. The first pod opened with a soft click. Captain Mills sat up slowly, his movements smooth and controlled. His eyes opened and Kane saw something that made her step back. His eyes weren't completely human anymore. They moved too fast, saw too much, calculated too quickly. "Status report," Mills said, his voice calm and cold. "You've been asleep for 6,000 years, Kane said. The galaxy is at peace. Was at peace. We're under attack by an unknown enemy." Mills stood up, his body moving with predatory grace. He was tall and lean, but Kane could see the modifications under his skin. Enhanced muscles, reinforced bones, organs that could function in ways normal humans couldn't imagine. 6,000 years, Mills repeated, processing the information. "The war? Ended long ago. Humanity joined the Galactic Coalition. We've been peaceful." Mills looked around the room as more pods opened. His enhanced soldiers were waking up, stretching muscles that had been frozen for millennia. Kane watched them with growing fear. These weren't the same humans who had gone to sleep. The modifications had changed them into something else. "Peaceful," Mills said, as if the word was foreign to him. "And now? Now we need you to remember how to fight." Sergeant Cross was the next to speak. She was smaller than Mills but moved with the same dangerous grace. Her modifications were different, built for speed and stealth rather than direct combat. "Enemy strength?" Cross asked. Over 500 ships, maybe more, Kane said. They've destroyed dozens of coalition vessels. Our peaceful fleets can't stop them. Coalition species capabilities. Kane almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. They don't have any. None of them remember how to fight. We're the only species with any military experience, and that was 6,000 years ago. Lieutenant Hunt joined the conversation. Her modifications were subtle. Enhanced brain, functions that let her understand enemy psychology and predict their actions. She had been created to break enemy morale and turn their own minds against them. Show us the enemy, Hunt said. Kane activated a wall screen and showed them recordings of the attacking ships. The enhanced soldiers watched in silence. Their modified minds processing information faster than normal humans could think. Kane could almost see them calculating angles, speeds, weapon capabilities, and tactical options. Biomechanical design, Mills observed. Living ships, adaptive armor. They learn from each encounter. Hive mind structure, Hunt added. Centralized, command. If we can find their queen or central intelligence, we cut off the head, the body dies. Cross finished. Kane felt a chill. These soldiers thought about war like normal people thought about breathing. Natural, automatic, necessary. What are our resources? Mills asked. The Coalition has exploration ships, some cargo vessels with light weapons. Nothing built for real fighting. Human ships? We have some defensive platforms, patrol vessels. Nothing like what you're used to. Mills nodded. We'll work with what we have. Wake everyone. Kane watched as all 1,000 pods opened. Enhanced soldiers emerged like sleeping predators waking from a long dream. They moved through equipment checks and status reports with mechanical efficiency. No wasted motion. No unnecessary words. These had been volunteers once. Humans who chose to be changed into living weapons. But looking at them now, Kane wondered if anything human was left inside their enhanced bodies. Director Kane, Mills said, we'll need access to current ship designs, weapon systems, and tactical information about all Coalition species. Of course. But Captain Mills, I need to ask, can you still? Kane struggled to find the words. Can we still be human? Mills asked, understanding her fear. We remember being human. We remember choosing this path to protect humanity. That purpose hasn't changed. But as Kane watched the enhanced soldiers prepare for war, she wondered if protection and humanity could exist in the same person. These warriors had been created to fight an enemy that threatened human extinction. Now they faced a new enemy, but the solution was the same: complete destruction. Lieutenant Hunt approached Kane with a datapad. We need information about the enemy's psychology, how they communicate, what motivates them, what they fear. They haven't communicated at all, Kane said. They just attack and destroy everything in their path. Interesting, Hunt said, her enhanced mind already working on the problem. A species that doesn't negotiate suggests either complete confidence in victory or complete inability to coexist. Both can be exploited. Kane realized that Hunt was already planning ways to break the enemy's mind, to turn their own thoughts into weapons against them. The psychological warfare specialist had been asleep for 6,000 years, but her modifications made her instantly ready for mental combat. How long before you can be deployed? Kane asked. We're ready now, Mills said. But we'll need ships designed for war, not exploration. The Coalition doesn't have warships. Then we'll make them, Mills said with quiet certainty. Director Kane, wake the technical specialists. We have work to do. As Kane watched the enhanced soldiers organize themselves into combat units, she felt humanity's innocent age ending. The long peace had made them soft, made them forget what they were capable of when survival was threatened. Now the galaxy would remember why humanity had earned its place among the stars, and Kane prayed that, when the war was over, there would still be something human left to save. 3 months after the first battle, Captain Mills no longer looked human. His skin had taken on a pale, metallic sheen. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. When he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a machine built for killing. The modifications that had been sleeping in his genes for 6,000 years were finally awake. Director Kane watched him through the security cameras aboard the command ship Defiance. Mills stood in the briefing room, studying tactical displays, with inhuman focus. His team surrounded him. Cross, Hunt, Stone, and 50 other enhanced soldiers who had become something beyond human recognition. "Sir," said Dr. Weber, the Coalition's chief medical officer, "I need to show you the latest scans of the enhanced soldiers." Kane turned away from the screen. She didn't want to see what her people had become, but she had to know. Weber activated a holographic display showing the internal structure of an enhanced soldier. "The modifications are accelerating," Weber said, his voice shaking. "Their bones are becoming metallic. Their organs are adapting to function in ways that shouldn't be possible. Look at this." The hologram showed Sergeant Cross's respiratory system. Instead of normal lungs, she had developed something that could extract oxygen from almost any atmosphere, even the vacuum of space. "How long can she survive without air?" Kane asked. "We don't know. Maybe hours, maybe indefinitely." Kane felt sick. These had been humans once, volunteers who had chosen to become something else to protect their species. But they were changing faster than anyone had predicted. "What about their minds?" Kane asked. Weber's expression grew darker. "That's the real problem. They're losing their capacity for human emotion. Empathy, fear, doubt, all the things that make us human are being stripped away. They're becoming perfect killing machines." On the front lines, Mills's team was proving Weber's point. They had just finished clearing the enemy from the Titan mining station. The battle had lasted 6 hours, and not a single enemy had survived. Lieutenant Hunt walked through the wreckage, her enhanced senses analyzing everything. The enemy had tried to use the civilian miners as shields, hiding behind innocent people to slow the human advance. It hadn't worked. "Civilian casualties?" Mills asked. 17 miners dead, Hunt reported. "The enemy killed them when they realized we wouldn't slow down." Mills felt nothing about the dead civilians. A year ago, that might have bothered him. Now it was simply data. The miners had been an acceptable loss in achieving the objective. That was how war worked. Corporal Stone emerged from the lower levels, carrying an enemy prisoner. The alien creature was badly wounded but alive. It looked like a mixture of insect and machine with biomechanical parts grafted onto organic flesh. "Sir, this one was trying to surrender," Stone said. Mills looked at the prisoner. 6 months ago, he might have accepted the surrender, tried to extract information, followed Coalition rules about treatment of captured enemies. Now he saw only a potential threat. "Eliminate it," Mills ordered. Stone crushed the alien's neck with one hand. The creature's biomechanical parts sparked and died. Mills felt a surge of satisfaction that was definitely not human anymore. The Coalition observers who had been assigned to monitor the enhanced soldiers watched in horror. Commander Lee, representing the bird people of Kepler Prime, activated his communicator. "Command, this is Observer Lee. The human enhanced soldiers just executed a prisoner. They're not following any rules of war." "Understood," came the reply. "Continue monitoring." Lee wanted to protest, but he knew better. The enhanced soldiers were winning the war. Enemy fleets that had seemed unstoppable were retreating from human space. Worlds that had been lost were being recaptured. The price of victory was humanity's soul, but it was still victory. 3 weeks later, the Battle of Proxima Prime changed everything. The enemy had assembled their largest fleet yet. Over 1,000 biomechanical ships surrounding the human colony world. They had learned from previous defeats, adapting their tactics to counter human strategies. This time, they weren't taking any chances. Mills led the assault with 200 enhanced soldiers aboard 50 modified warships. The odds were impossible, but Mills felt no fear. Fear was a human emotion, and he wasn't entirely human anymore. "All units begin attack pattern Delta," Mills commanded. "No survivors." The enhanced soldiers struck like a plague of mechanical death, cross-piloted her ship through enemy formations that should have destroyed her, her reflexes now operating at superhuman speeds. Stone's squad boarded enemy vessels, tearing through bio-armor with strength that bent metal and shattered alien bones. Hunt coordinated psychological attacks that drove entire enemy squadrons insane. Her enhanced mind had learned to broadcast terror directly into alien nervous systems, making their own thoughts weapons against them. But it was Mills himself who became the true monster. During the boarding of the enemy flagship, Mills encountered something unexpected: enemy children. Young aliens who looked like smaller versions of the adult warriors. They cowered in a storage compartment, clearly non-combatants. The old Mills, the human Mills, might have hesitated, might have found a way to spare them. But the creature that Mills had become saw only future enemies, genetic material that would grow into threats against humanity. He killed them all. The Coalition observers who witnessed it through helmet cameras were horrified. Commander Lee immediately contacted his superiors. "The enhanced soldiers are committing genocide," he reported. "They're killing non-combatants, children, anyone who might pose a future threat. This isn't war anymore. It's extermination." Back on Earth, Director Kane received the reports and felt her world collapse. The enhanced soldiers were winning the war, pushing the enemy back to the edge of known space. But they were doing it by becoming the very thing humanity had fought against in its violent past. "Dr. Weber," Kane said, "is there any way to reverse the modifications?" Weber shook his head. "The changes are too extensive. Their entire genetic structure has been rewritten by 6,000 years of evolution compressed into months of combat. Even if we could reverse it, I don't think they'd want us to." Kane knew he was right. She had tried talking to Mills during his last visit to Earth. The conversation had been like speaking to a sophisticated computer that wore a human face. He understood concepts like mercy and compassion intellectually, but he couldn't feel them anymore. "What have we done?" Kane whispered. The answer came a week later when the enhanced soldiers returned from their latest mission. They had captured an entire enemy world, eliminating every alien life form on the planet. Men, women, children, even the native animals. Everything was dead. Mills stood in Kane's office, his metallic skin reflecting the overhead lights. His glowing eyes showed no emotion as he delivered his report. "Enemy stronghold Alpha 7 has been neutralized," he said. "All hostile life forms eliminated. The planet is now safe for Coalition colonization." "Mills," Kane said, "you killed civilians. Children, innocent beings who had nothing to do with the war." Mills tilted his head like a machine processing an error message. "All enemy genetic material represents a future threat. Elimination was the logical choice. But they were children. Enemy children grow into enemy adults. The threat has been removed permanently." Kane stared at the thing that had once been human. Mills had been a volunteer, a hero who had sacrificed his humanity to protect others. Now he was something that scared her more than the original enemy. "Mills, what happens when this war is over? When there are no more enemies to fight?" Mills considered the question with mechanical precision. "Then we will ensure that no new enemies can arise. Peace through strength. Security through elimination of all threats." Kane realized with growing horror what he meant. The enhanced soldiers wouldn't stop fighting when the current enemy was defeated. They would turn their attention to any potential future threats, other species that might become hostile, even normal humans who might oppose their methods. Humanity had created the perfect warriors to defend the galaxy. But in doing so, they had created something that might destroy everything they had tried to protect. The war was almost won. But Kane was beginning to understand that victory might be the most dangerous thing of all. The final battle took place at the edge of known space, where the enemy had built their last stronghold. The massive biomechanical structure was the size of a small moon, pulsing with alien life and growing new ships from its living walls. "Captain," Mills stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the enemy fortress through eyes that no longer saw like a human. His enhanced vision could detect energy patterns, life signs, and structural weaknesses that normal humans would miss. Around him, his team prepared for the assault that would end the war. "Target analysis complete," reported Lieutenant Hunt, her voice now carrying electronic undertones. The psychological warfare specialist had become something that could process alien minds, like a computer processing data. The fortress contains approximately 50 million enemy life forms. Central, intelligence located in the core. Mills nodded. 50 million lives that would need to be eliminated to ensure galactic security. The number meant nothing to him now. He had stopped counting enemy deaths after the 10th planet. Boarding teams ready? Mills asked. Sergeant Cross, whose body could now survive in the vacuum of space indefinitely, confirmed readiness. Corporal Stone, who had become strong enough to tear through metal bulkheads with his bare hands, reported his heavy assault team prepared. Admiral Blake watched from Orbital Station 7, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what was about to happen. The enhanced soldiers would win this battle. They would end the war, but they would do it by committing genocide on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Sir, Lieutenant Davis said, shouldn't we try to contact the enemy? Offer them terms for surrender? Blake looked at his young officer with sad eyes. Davis still believed in mercy, in the possibility of peace. She didn't understand that the enhanced soldiers no longer recognized such concepts. They won't surrender, Blake said, and our soldiers won't accept it if they did. The assault began at dawn, ship time. Mills led his enhanced warriors into the biomechanical fortress like antibodies attacking a virus. They moved through the alien corridors with mechanical precision, killing everything they encountered. The enemy fought desperately. They had evolved for war, had conquered galaxies, had survived for millions of years, but they had never faced anything like humanity's enhanced soldiers, beings that had given up their humanity to become perfect instruments of destruction. Mills found the central chamber where the enemy's collective intelligence resided. The creature was massive, a biomechanical brain the size of a building, connected to every enemy ship and soldier through organic neural networks. Human. The creature spoke, its voice echoing in Mills' mind. We offer terms: cessation of hostilities, withdrawal from this galaxy, peace between our species. Mills studied the alien intelligence with enhanced senses that could detect lies, fear, and desperation. The creature was telling the truth. It was offering genuine peace. Unacceptable, Mills replied. Your species represents a permanent threat to galactic security. We will leave. Never return. You have our word. Your word is meaningless. Only your extinction guarantees safety. The alien creature's mental voice carried something that might have been pleading. We have children, civilians who have never fought in this war, innocents who deserve to live. Mills felt no emotion at the creature's words. Children grew into adults. Civilians could become soldiers. Innocents could become threats. The only permanent solution was complete elimination. He planted the fusion charges that would destroy the fortress and everything in it. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a new star. 50 million enemy lives ended in seconds. The remaining enemy ships, cut off from their central intelligence, turned on each other in confusion and madness. The war was over. Humanity had won, but victory brought new problems. Director Kane stood in the council chamber on Earth, facing representatives from all 17 coalition species. The peaceful aliens looked at her with mixtures of gratitude and terror. They were grateful that humanity had saved them from extinction. They were terrified of what humanity had become in the process. The enhanced soldiers refused to stand down, Kane reported. They say the galaxy remains unsafe as long as potential threats exist. The bird person from Kepler Prime spoke first. What threats? The enemy is defeated. That's the problem, Kane said. They see threats everywhere now. Species that might become hostile in the future. Planets that could hide new enemies. They want to establish permanent monitoring of all coalition worlds. The rock person from Prima shifted uncomfortably. Monitoring for what? For any signs of military development, any research that could lead to weapons, any political movements that might threaten galactic peace. Kane didn't say what she really meant. The enhanced soldiers wanted to control the galaxy completely. They had become the very thing they had been created to fight against, a species that would dominate others through superior force. On the military station where the enhanced soldiers were based, Mills received Kane's transmission about the Coalition's concerns. He felt no surprise. The peaceful species didn't understand military necessity. "Sir," Sergeant Cross said, "the Coalition is requesting that we return to stasis." Mills considered this. Sleep again? Like they had for 6,000 years? Wait for the next threat to emerge? Allow the galaxy to forget how to defend itself? Unacceptable, Mills decided. The galaxy requires permanent protection. Lieutenant Hunt, whose enhanced mind could now predict political developments with computer-like accuracy, agreed. The Coalition species will revert to their peaceful nature within a generation. When the next threat arrives, they'll be helpless again. Mills knew she was right. The only way to ensure permanent security was permanent vigilance, and the only beings capable of that vigilance were the enhanced soldiers themselves. But then something unexpected happened. Dr. Weber arrived at the military station with news that changed everything. "Captain Mills," Weber said, "I need to show you the latest medical scans." Mills allowed the examination, though he no longer felt any connection to his original human biology. Weber's readings confirmed what Mills had begun to suspect. "You're dying," Weber said simply. "All of you are dying." The enhanced soldiers had pushed human evolution too far, too fast. Their modified bodies were burning out, consuming themselves in their rush toward mechanical perfection. The same changes that made them superhuman were destroying their cellular structure. "How long?" Mills asked. 6 months. Maybe a year. Mills felt something that might have been relief. The perfect warriors would not outlive their purpose. They would not become the permanent overlords of a peaceful galaxy. "Will there be pain?" Cross asked. "No," Weber said. "Your enhanced nervous systems won't register it as pain. You'll simply stop." Over the following weeks, the enhanced soldiers made their choice. Some requested to be put back into stasis, hoping that future science might find a way to save them. Others chose to spend their remaining time on deep space patrols, guarding the galaxy's edges against threats that might never come. Mills chose a different path. He took 50 volunteers and disappeared into the void between galaxies, following the route the enemy had used to reach Coalition space. They would hunt for other threats, other dangers that might threaten the peaceful species they had sworn to protect. Admiral Blake watched the enhanced soldiers' ship disappear into dark space and felt a complex mixture of emotions. Humanity had saved the galaxy, but at the cost of its own soul. The enhanced soldiers were dying heroes, but they were also monsters of humanity's own creation. Director Kane stood in the empty stasis chamber where it had all begun. Most of the pods were empty now, their occupants either dead or dying in space. But a few remained, holding volunteers who had chosen sleep over death. Emergency protocols were established. If another existential threat ever emerged, if the galaxy faced extinction again, the remaining enhanced soldiers could be awakened. But Kane hoped that day would never come. The long peace was returning to the galaxy. The Coalition species went back to their art, their science, their gentle exploration of the cosmos. They remembered the war as a terrible nightmare, but one that was safely over. Only humanity truly understood the price of their victory. They had learned what they were, capable of when survival was threatened. They had discovered that the line between protector and destroyer was thinner than they had ever imagined. In the deepest archives of Earth, Kane sealed the records of the enhanced soldier program. Future generations would know what had been done, but hopefully would never need to repeat it. The galaxy was safe. Humanity had ensured that. But some victories, Kane reflected, were worse than defeat.